Hello and welcome back to Coast FC, the Canadian soccer podcast focused on all things CPL, Canadian Championship, and more. My name is Felipe Vallejo.
And I'm Mike Rice.
And today we're going back over three huge games in the Canadian Championship that happened this week. It was a week where there was a lot of discussion after the fact, a lot of online arguments were caused because of these matches, a lot of discourse, which is, good in some regards, maybe not so great in other regards. But overall, what happened on the pitch was, from a CPL point of view, fantastic. And I think in all three games, the underdog really showed themselves and proved themselves worthy. And I think the Canadian Championship so far, this competition this year, has proven itself a worthy watch. But before we dive into the three matches, remember to follow us on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC, as well as finding us on Spotify and YouTube for our lovely visuals under the same name. But we're going to start with the first match, which is, of course, the Toronto FC Saint-Laurent match. That one finished 8-1 in favor of Toronto FC. Toronto FC now scoring the most goals in a single match in Canadian Championship history, something that John Herdman did want earlier in the competition against Simcoe Rovers. He achieved it in this one. We'll talk a little bit about maybe his game plan throughout the conversation. A lot of goals. I'll go through them all, but I don't think we're going to go through all of them in our conversation. But I'll just mention right now. DeAndre Kerr scored 4 goals in this one. 12th minute, 14th minute, 43rd minute, 72nd minute. Mailula scored in the 50th minute. Derek Etienne Jr. scored a penalty in the 56th minute. An unfortunate own goal for Goulet in the 62nd minute. Prince Owusu, on his, I believe it was his return since the suspension for Toronto FC, scored in the 80th minute. And Saint Laurent did get one back in the 89th minute by, I believe it was a homegrown boy, like he was from Toronto, scoring against Toronto FC, which is Aristilde. So 9 goals in this match. So if you loved goals, you've loved this match. But it was a game that the scoreline actually didn't reflect the match. Not to say Toronto FC didn't deserve to win. Of course, they deserved to win, and they probably deserved most, if not all, of those goals. But I think it's quite harsh for Saint Laurent because they actually had, and I know this is surprising, more shots and shots on target than Toronto FC in this match. They had 22 shots and 11 of those on target. They had a couple of posts, a couple of near misses, but Saint Laurent came to BMO Field to play. They wanted to go toe to toe, even though that they were obviously chasing the tie because they had already lost 3-0 at home. So Toronto had the 3-goal advantage. The fact that the team came in and they could have played low block. They could have tried to counterattack. They could have tried to really, grind out a potential result and still fail. But they decided to go the other route, which is no, we want to show what we're worth. And it doesn't matter what the scoreline is. We want to prove that Quebec has really good talents and we can go toe-to-toe with the best teams in the country. And I don't know about you, Mike, but for me, it certainly felt like that performance demonstrated that.
Yeah, definitely. It was nice to see them go all out. I think, like you say, they'll probably feel really hard done by with the 8, but Toronto really showed their cutting edge and that little extra quality that when you do get in the final third, you can convert the chances. I mean, DeAndre Kerr, I didn't see him scoring 4 goals. He's not been in prolific form since he's started to work his way into the team in Toronto in MLS. Over this last sort of season and a half or so. It's not exactly been prolific, but he's got his goals in this one. I'm sure from a Toronto point of view, that's great. Yeah, get someone with some more confidence in front of goal. Owusu's been on great form. but you could tell from Toronto this was a very much of it like, right, when we've got the ball, we're going to do something, but when we haven't, it's that the game's won anyway. And it did give Saint Laurent the chance to play in that style. And I think once the manager's seen that, yeah, it's going to be end to end, they're not. Toronto aren't performing at the same way they would in an MLS match. They're a little bit more off the pace of knowing they've got that quality. And I think that probably infuriated Gavran quite a bit because he was making quite a few saves and getting very frustrated.
Yeah,
like, come on, guys.
He was a very busy keeper in that goal, and he was getting frustrated, like you mentioned, and that the team were allowing so many shots against
them. So, but yeah, no, it was fantastic to see them get the goal at the end, and the celebrations were fantastic. Like, the guys are really had the chance to have something to cheer about. As like you say, I mean, they played for 45 minutes with 10 men as well, so it was made even harder. And the fact that they did keep going. It's a great advert for the attacking players, especially in this team, for like future potential moves into CPL and whatever happens with Saint Laurent in the near future. Yeah, they really got their chance to put themselves in the shop window, so to speak.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, they might not be just the players that have put themselves in the shop window, but we'll talk about that towards the end. They were, the team itself, yeah, the performance was very, very admirable from CS Saint-Laurent, even though, like, in the first 30, 40 minutes, 43 minutes, Toronto FC were already 3 goals up.
Yeah.
So at that point, it was 6-0 swing from a semi-pro side to Toronto FC. I appreciate that, like, Adam Jenkins and the commentators were trying to be like, it's not done yet, but like trying to make sure that they're not, speaking in absolutes when there's still a match to play. But at that point, it was virtually done. And then it was even more virtually decided when an unfortunate red card for Buganmi, the veteran midfielder that was the sort of the engine of the team in that midfield. He was so physical across both ties. And against Halifax as well, he was very physical. He was like, he never backed down. He had grit. He got stuck in with his tackles. I really was impressed by him in these matches so far against Halifax, and then the 1.5 against Toronto FC. But unfortunately for him, he got sent off in the 44th minute by a bit of a harsh red card. I mean, obviously, if you put your boot that high and you strike an opponent in the face with that much power, it's going to end up as a red card. But you could see that Bugami really didn't mean it. He immediately went to go tend to it and everything. It's unfortunate. It's like, I can't even say that it's not deserving of a red because it is sort of reckless, violent conduct. But at the same time, it's one of those where it's like, that it's not malicious. That he's probably not even seeing the player go with his head, because I believe it was Coelho who kind of ducked down a little bit into the ball as he got a full boot to the face afterwards. The mark that he had. But yeah, I don't know. Could you give him any more charity than that and say that maybe it's a yellow, or do you think that was inevitable to get a red card?
Yeah, no, I think this was one of those cases where you just want the underdog to get a break, but when you look at it, the ref's got no choice. Like, he has to do it. And it's just as a neutral, you sit there going, "Oh, just let it go," but you can't just start doing that in football. Like, if an underdog gets the rub of the green, like you say, I probably didn't see Coelho going in like that. I think it just showed throughout this match that the MLS side are the quicker. They're the more they get their full-time start and training well, that they just have that little bit more sharpness than these guys do, purely on the basis that they get all this extra training and they are professional players. So it was just a bit unfortunate to see that. Yeah, they just couldn't quite keep up with them when they were in certain areas and a little bit slower. But yeah, when he went up, you saw him like straight away going down, making sure the guy was okay. And And it was good to those situations. Sometimes everyone riles up and gets angry, and it was nice to see for a change when everyone was just making sure the guy's okay first and then go on.
Yeah, no. And I feel like even though he was sort of like surprised and a little outraged, I even think him out of the heat of the moment will look at that and be like,
Yeah.
obviously I didn't want to do it, and obviously it's unfortunate, but I don't think anyone can deny that that's
No.
probably a red card on any pitch with any ref in any game.
No.
But yeah, I mean, credit to Saint Laurent that first half. You know, it was 3-0, but they did hit a post. They forced Gavron into a couple of saves and 10 men down in the second half. It was really only going to go one way. Toronto FC were going for blood. You know, John Herdman revealed afterwards, and DeAndre Kerr revealed afterwards that they were trying to make up for what they didn't do against Simcoe County Rovers in their goal tally and their goal haul. They wanted to score, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and they got to 8. And it's something where, on one hand, you can say that's sort of disrespectful to be like, we want to get a goal tally against the semi-pro team, and you want to, and it feels like you're not taking them seriously, and you're treating them as, I guess, like sandbags that you can just kick against until you feel satisfied. But on the other hand, you could see it as that is them taking them seriously. John Herdman, in his comments afterwards, said, "We know that Saint Laurent is a side that we can't be complacent against. So we're gonna make sure that we're as professional, as decisive, as efficient as we would be against any other top side against this side, 100% of the time, just focused in, locked in, so that we can ensure that we go through and reach these goals of getting to a final and getting the goal tally." I don't know, which side do you take on sort of this narrative of the fact that Toronto FC, we've seen teams before, like the first one that comes to mind is Germany against Brazil, when Germany were already like 6 goals up at halftime or whatever it was.
Yeah.
They kind of said, "Oh, sorry, let's tone it down. Let's not humiliate the home crowd."
I
Other
guess
teams don't. So
no.
what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the context of like Herdman coming into this team, like, and last year was a bit of a train wreck. They haven't been a great team for a while now, and he's got to build up that sort of killer instinct, because even in MLS play, it's not like they're a particularly consistent side. Like, they're not going out and they're not dominating games, and I think they've got the same amount of defeats as wins, without checking the table now. He needs to get those players in that mentality of, we're going out here to win, we're going out here to be the biggest team, and it's huge for them as well. Like, they've got going through into their season, like, this game is not going to make a huge impact. Like, Saint Laurent aren't a huge team that's going to alter much just by themselves on Toronto's future. But when they go in here, they feel like a dominant, confident side. They've been probably the weakest side in MLS across the 3 Canadian teams for a while now, and now it's time to. So it's like, right, actually, no, we need to assert ourselves. Like, we need to be competing with Vancouver. Like, we need, like, the Whitecaps. We need to make sure that we want to feel like the big side in this country, and that will help build up this momentum that they're trying to build over in Toronto. So I think if they were going to start taking things easy and relaxing, which I think some of the defenders did at times, but the attackers definitely not, then it just seeps in for those next few games. And he just wants them to say 90 minutes, this is what we do every game, 90 minutes, this is our game plan, not 60 minutes, and then if we're winning, we'll slow down a bit. Like, they can't afford to do that in any other game. So he's just trying to keep that mentality for them going into those bigger matches.
Yeah, great point. I think that is definitely what John Herdman is trying to do. Is it's not just the result itself, but it's the performance behind it. It's the mentality and the concentration behind it. And again, sometimes he doesn't help himself with some of the comments that he makes, as we've seen not only with Toronto but also with Canada.
Yeah.
And some of the actions that he makes. The fact that they took off Insigne, I think it was like after half an hour, like not even waiting till 40 the halftime. Just I think they were like, 2-0 up or maybe at 3-0 at that point, and they just said, all right, we're done. Insigne, you can come off. You've done your job essentially. And they put Bernardeschi for I think the same thing, like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. So obviously they had a plan going into it. But I mean, you can look at it as disrespectful and everything, but at the same time, you don't want to be complacent. And as we're going to talk about the next two matches, maybe if you are even a little bit complacent and you're not as switched on and as focused as you are from the first minute, like Toronto showed, you might have some bad performances, like in the man, like for the other two MLS sides. So maybe the other two results kind of vindicated John Herdman in the sense where it's like, it doesn't matter who's in front of you, you play your game, and if it turns out 8-1, if it turns out 1-0, it doesn't matter as long as it secures the result and the performance is good. So I think that's probably Toronto's mentality moving forward as they look to climb back up the table in the MLS. But going back to CS Saint-Laurent, a performance that they can be proud about. I think everyone that actually watched the game and then just look at the scoreline can agree that they've really made a great show for themselves across two legs, across the game, against the Wanderers that they won in penalty shootouts. It was the fairy tale run that we were hoping to see from a League One side. And I think that the boost that it gives to the players is going to be huge. And the boost that it gives to the club, it might be very, very big, because I don't know. I think it was before the match, or I don't know if it was after the match. So many things have happened this past week that I can't put things in order right now. But a friend of the show, Josh Healy, aka Wanderers Notes, broke the news that CS Saint-Laurent and the CPL were in preliminary talks about potentially joining the league, which is obviously something that is massive and something that we would all welcome, because we need a CPL team in Quebec and we need more CPL teams, case in point. So to be able to have a team like CS Saint-Laurent that already has an established fan base, that already has some established players, that is somebody that you can sort of trust to put the right foot forward, is huge. The biggest thing for them, from what I read, is they need to find proper investors and they need to find a stadium that is CPL worthy. And if they have those things, if they have that sort of infrastructure financially and literally infrastructure of the stadium, then they might have good prospects. Obviously, afterwards, in relation to it, both the league and CS Saint Laurent said, listen, this is just speculation. Obviously, this is something that we would both love, but they were trying to downplay it because, again, probably preliminary talks. So we don't want to, force any narratives here. But would you welcome CS Saint-Laurent, given what you've seen across these games, would you welcome a team like CS Saint-Laurent to the CPL? And do you think they've done enough to prove themselves at the level to compete with the other CPL teams?
Yeah, definitely. It would be really exciting. It's great, like the success that other teams have had, Cavalry, Forge, the biggest examples where you've got a club that's sort of been built up and then goes into the CPL. It provides them that sort of stability within, like in the playing side, to be quite well prepared. So that's oh, excuse me. So that's like a really important part, that it's not just the other sides who have struggled, where they've had to sort of almost create their team and create the playing side as well as creating the club can be really difficult. We saw how hard it was for Vancouver getting prepared for the expansion season. So this puts them in so much, like in a really good, like that first step is really good. I know the crowd probably won't be the exact same throughout the season, in the CPL season, as it was when Toronto arrived into town, but it was a great backing from the club. Like the town came out, the fans were there, and so that there is something there that you can that's ready to be tapped into if you can push into the CPL. It's a location the CPL want to be in as well. I mean, if they can get the right investors, it seems the most logical step for anyone coming into the league. Like teams like Saint Laurent, TSS Rovers, like they when things are when things are organized on the field already, and you can then work out the things in the background, then that's the best way, like from my eyes as like a outsider not in the boardroom doing all the negotiations. It seems the best way of getting prepared to come into the league and being able to compete. And you've got the coach there that's done a really great job as well, and showing some exciting stuff when they're on the ball. So it could be really great.
Yeah, I think it's only a positive for the league. Even the fact that they are allegedly in talks, even just that already shows, how much the need for a team in Quebec is, and the worth that Saint Laurent have proven themselves to have and their performances. So regardless of whatever happens, whatever comes out of it, it's the right step forward. Hopefully, something tangible comes out of it, that we do have something. I would love for us to have more than just 8 teams before the World Cup year, but we'll see.
Yeah.
But I would love for something like that to be able to happen. So yeah, great news for Saint Laurent. Fantastic job. Congratulations to all those involved over really good 3 games in the Canadian Championship. And hopefully we'll see you soon on the show in the future as well.
We got to remember to mention that I can't remember who it was. Was it Tuwali? Trying getting Beledeschi's shirt and Beledeschi's after his.
Oh,
Like,
yes.
I'm so sorry, I'm not allowed to give it away.
Yeah, and then afterward, the club were like, "Sorry, this shirt's expensive," but they kind of like fixed it in the bed. And Bernadeschi's like, "Why won't you give it to me?" He's like, "No, I want to. Promise, I want to." It was so funny, such a wholesome exchange.
You think
But yeah,
just buy it for them.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I really like that moment because it showed that the Canadian Championship is it shows how great of competition is, where somebody like a local boy from Quebec can exchange shirts and have this little funny interaction with a player that has been at the top level of football, played for his international team, played for Juventus. It's incredible. It's surreal, honestly. Watching
it's
that,
a great, good, like lovely wholesome
but
moment.
exactly, it's such a good wholesome moments, and hopefully we'll see a couple more wholesome moments from Saint Laurent in the future.
Yeah.
Now we're going to move on to the second game, which was the Vancouver Whitecaps against Cavalry FC. This one was once again at the MLS house of the Vancouver Whitecaps, BC Place, and this one finished 1-0 in favor of Cavalry. Another shock, and shocker, it was against the Whitecaps again. At that point, the only team to have been beaten by a CPL side, and it's happened now 3 times, and twice on their own home ground. So definitely not a fantastic time to be a Whitecap supporter. In wake of other news that we won't mention right now at the time of recording. But yeah, it was a bit tough to watch this one. I will admit, I was there watching and working it. And well, I have a lot of thoughts about the Whitecaps and their performances. Let's start with, being a CPL podcast, the CPL team, which was with Cavalry, because Cavalry came into this game and they were 2-1 down. They were away from home. They could have easily come in and just lost. And I think that's what people expected to happen, is that they would have lost. They would have put in a good effort, but they would have lost the match and lost the tie. And, it's all about, at the end of the day, did you show enough pride? But Cavalry came in one step beyond that. They came in and said, no, we can win. And that was the mentality that Tommy Wilden Jr. wanted to bring into this match. That's the sort of the levels and standards that he always is demanding from his players. It doesn't matter who's in front of him. And honestly, from the first minute, Cavalry were fully immersed in this match, just going toe to toe with Vancouver, and with the fact that they got, yes, it was an unfortunate own goal from Ranko Veselinovic, but the fact that they got that goal and kept going and they didn't go and drop back or anything showed that they were there to win. And I was really proud of the performance. Regardless of what the Whitecaps performance was, I thought they played really, really well in the first half, and especially in the second half. What about you? What were your thoughts on the Cavalry's performance?
Really good, really good. I thought Daly and Trafford had a great like great moments in the middle there, like coming up against sort of a midfield three, and you're trying to get Camargo further forward. So there's the opportunity that Vancouver could like try and take control of that with an extra body, or force Camargo back and make it harder for Cavalry to break. But they did a fantastic job, and the quick thinking of Camargo for the throw in to get it to Akio. And I said it so many times, when he runs at defenders, it doesn't matter who they are, like he'll run at them, and he's got the ability, and that's what caused the own goal. He just went at them, and he causes problems with his pace. So it was great to see. I was really happy to see him do that, because a little earlier on, I think the cross came in and he was a little bit unsure about a finish at the back post, and it was well saved from Boma. But yeah, when he got that ball, I was, oh yes, watching him run at fullbacks is great fun. And I thought Leighton Brooks as well was really quite exciting, really like aggressive on the ball, wanted to get forward. And I keep going back to him, but Malcolm Shaw looks like he's found the perfect home. So like as a centre forward there, his hold up play was great, linking players in, and when the ball comes into the box, he's a real threat. And these are it's not like the Whitecaps put in a back three that were filled with youngsters like Veselinovic, Laborda, regular starters. Vic comes in and out a bit, but I thought he had a great game up against them when Cavalry went forward. But I think when we talk about our player of the week, like I had three in my head, and I think I'm going to have to give it to Carducci, because I think for me, he was absolutely fantastic. You know, he came out and dealt with a few things when the ball were coming in behind the defense. He made a few fantastic saves as well, and yeah, I thought he had a great game as well.
Yeah, no, and it's tough to choose like who had the best game in that Cavalry, because for me, I'll be honest, my player of the week was Dan Klomp, because I thought he was immense in that match. He dealt with every ball into the box. He dealt with every dangerous ball in behind. He was the one that was stunting, and he drive forward from the likes of Ali Ahmed and Ryan Gauld. He was throwing himself for blocks. It was like he had a superb performance, and the fact that I mean, it's a sign of compliments when, or it's a compliment when you have the Whitecaps bring on their best two players at halftime, because they've kind of realized, oh, we can't get through right now. We kind of need the better players to come on. And the fact that even still they were unable to score because of just how on form the two the defenders were, and Marco Carducci, like you mentioned, and the entire defense, honestly.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic display from Cavalry overall. And they were like, I honestly think that they were hard done by with the away goals rule, because in the second half, they had the opportunities, because the Whitecaps completely sort of folded in the second half, and they had those opportunities. I feel like this is where a little bit of the inexperience shows in these competitions, because there's a little bit of like, they were really good defensively, they were really good in the middle and creating chances, but when it came to the final ball, or when it came to actually shooting in those moments, that little bit of decisiveness that you need, that was what was lacking from Cavalry. And I think Tommy Wilden Jr. recognized that after the fact. He said he was obviously really proud, but he felt like he was probably gonna, like, the disappointment was gonna sink in after he watched the game back and saw the opportunities that his team missed. Because it was just that tiny, like, 1% difference between scoring and not scoring is that moment of decisiveness. And it's something that I actually was thinking of wanting to bring up as well in the game against between Toronto FC and CS Saint-Laurent, because that was honestly the biggest difference in that game as well, was with Toronto and Saint-Laurent, was just Toronto were just that much more deadly in the box. They were just a little bit more, clinical. They were just more decisive, and that's the reason why they got 8. And if Saint Laurent had that same level of decisiveness, they probably could have gone 2, 3, or maybe even 4, and made it a more, maybe even a closer match than it arguably was. And I think that's the same thing it was here with Cavalry. They could have easily gotten that goal, and they probably should have gotten that goal. One of my favorite quotes from Vinny Sartini was when he said around the 75th minute, he turned to his coach and said, "We're losing," just because that's how well Cavalry are playing. That's how bad the Whitecaps were playing. But yeah, when you were looking at the last 15, 20 minutes, did you think, Cavalry going to kick on and they're going to get the winner?
Yeah, it was hard to see. I did feel like they could. It just sometimes felt like write down our notes beforehand. The Jesse Daly little turn in the box and his man and finish. Like when it's happening, you're like, go on. Oh yeah, it's Jesse Daly. Like he's the issue we got with him is he's such a hard worker and does everything, but he's not a clinical finisher. And it's like the finish goes too close to the to Bomo, who's able to save. And you just think, oh, the issue you've got in the sort of CPL, you could argue when you're coming up against a bigger side, an MLS side, is some of your players are very much specialists at certain things rather than all-round players who have got that confidence and clinical edge in the box. That's why the other players are getting paid the much bigger money.
Yeah. I mean, I think that these games have really shown what like the difference is between really a professional side at the top level, a professional side like Cavalry, like the other CPL teams that are still sort of coming into their own after such a short time of only 6 years and limited resources, and like a semi-pro side where, like, I forget who it was that said it from CS Saint-Laurent, but like Toronto FC, after the game, they went back to the training pitch the next day. We went back to our jobs. We went back to being postmen, and we went back to our accounting jobs and stuff like that. So it kind of shows there are great players at all levels. It's just those fine margins that kind of define games. And unfortunately, from a Cavalry perspective, they weren't able to kick on and get that goal. The Whitecaps managed to hold on despite losing 1-0 to draw 2-2 on aggregate and pass on away goals. I think that the Whitecaps, I don't know if there's too much to talk about the performance in itself. I know we will probably want to talk about Vanni Sartini's comments afterwards. But as someone that was there and watching the match, it was a bit hard to stomach the performance, because this wasn't a case like, if you follow the Whitecaps, you'll know that a couple weeks ago they lost 3-0 to LAFC in a really bad match. But at least in that one, you could see what they were trying to do. That you could see the ideas. They could see that there was a plan in place and they were trying to follow it, but they kind of just strayed away from it at times. People were too individualistic, and it kind of fell through. But there was effort there. In this one, and this is something that Vanni said and emphasized heavily, there was a huge level of complacency in the match, and especially in the second half. And I think a little bit of naivety from Vanni himself, because he started, Cyprian Cachuele, who's been doing well for WFC2, but he's a WFC2 player that just came into the team, and Giuseppe Bovolina, the A-League player that they bought literally a few weeks ago, that only made that brief appearance at the end of the Cavalry match. Both of them starting alongside Levante Johnson, who had a great game against Cavalry. He had the 2 goals. Or he had a great period, because he had the beginning, he wasn't fantastic. And he was the most senior member of the attack. I feel like, I was going to ask you this question. I feel like I've heard some people say that was a disrespectful lineup from Vanni Sartini, to think that he could get the job done against Cavalry at home with the kids up front, essentially. And the midfield was sort of rotated. I mean, Seb Berhalter usually isn't starter. Andres Cubas is there. Pedro Vite is somewhat of a starter. Ali Ahmed is Ali Ahmed. He is a given starter. Luis Martins, I don't know, due to age and fitness, he's not really featuring all that much these days. But like you mentioned, the defense was great. And Isaac Bomer, despite being the backup, probably the best player on the pitch for the Whitecaps in the 90 minutes. So overall, did you think that the lineup that Vanni chose was disrespectful, or more sort of like what I think, which is more naive?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's disrespectful at all. I'm more with you. I think it comes. This is what I would have kind of assumed they would have played anyway, like, because they've got a tough schedule. Like they've got players who need to. The rotation in cup games is important. Some of these players need that. You've got to play them, because if there's an injury to Brian White, or if there's an injury to Kubas, these players have got to come in, and if you're not playing them at all, like they're all of a sudden like it's like they're getting thrown in the deep end. I mean, but also like you said, I think Vita's if Vita had a better game in the middle and was trying to link up the midfield with the attack, then maybe some of these things would have died down slightly. They would have still been angry, but I think some of these players who you want to be really fighting for starting places week in, week out, that's what Vita's there. Like he should be doing that. He's at that part of his career where he needs to be. Like he's a young player, but he should be trying to be a regular starter in this team, or at least show the level that he can compete for places. And I don't think he didn't do enough in this game. Along with not just picking on him, but the you want that link, because I think those young players up front, they would have expected, knowing that Cavalry have to score, like they have to score 2 goals. So this is a great chance to use Johnson and Catchwele with a bit of pace and think, well, at some point they're going to have to come forward. We could probably get these guys one-on-one with defenders with a quick transitional attack, and we're putting them into a good place to succeed. But the way the whole team performs didn't really do that enough, and then it makes it look like, oh, these strikers have been thrown out, and it's that they're not in the best place to be able to do it to succeed. And it all comes back to how they've performed as a group. I don't think this starting lineup was anything. I think it was better than I was kind of expecting them to go with.
Really? Okay. Well, interesting.
Purely on the defense, I would have thought they would have had left, they would have played either Laborda and Veselinovic, like not both of them. I kind of thought they would get the game, play one of your others main guys in the back to keep them managing it, and then maybe see if we can get another centre back in that's give them a bit of a go. Maybe someone who's like Brown, who's not playing too often, give him a chance to get some minutes under his belt and things like that. But yeah, I still think it was decent, really like a decent lineup for what they were going in to do with a lead.
Yeah. No, and I think that it was a little surprising, obviously, but I think the feeling in the press box beforehand was it was bold, but it was exciting because we wanted to see what the players like Catchwell and Bobolina could do. There was a sense of, if Cavalry scored, there's going to be changes, and evidently there was. Cavalry scored, and then at halftime, Ryan Gauld and Brian White came in.
Exactly.
So you kind of understood that the Whitecaps started to take it a little bit more seriously. But the second half was arguably worse than the first half, even with them on the pitch. I mean, Gauld was by far the most dangerous player on the pitch offensively.
Yeah.
You know, Ali Ahmed as well was trying his best, but it was just, it was such a flat second half from the Whitecaps. And it was really unfortunate given, that this was Canadian Championship, that the reigning champs. People were coming in expecting to see something similar to the Toronto match that we saw. Maybe not 8-1, but still a victory, and to show and to flex that they're the best team in Canada, as Vanny said earlier this season. But this was a really, really just sorry showing from the Whitecaps, and you could feel it in the press box that it was just kind of like deflating from the people that were there, that just expected more from the Whitecaps. There was some silver linings. Obviously, I think Bobolina played quite well. He was young, but at least he was energetic. He was dynamic.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, there was a little bit of a disconnect between the midfield and the attack. He tried to be that link out wide, especially when he was kind of brought back. He was a little bit deeper when they switched to like a 3-5-2. But obviously, he's still young. He's still learning. He'll be better when he performs. And Bomer made a couple of big saves and showed that he's still a good deputy to Takaoka when Takaoka isn't available. But aside from that, I don't think there's much more silver linings that you can really.
This is the thing we could say. Like we praise Toronto for going in with 100% effort. Well, and you go in and you say, this is how we need to start playing. Vancouver have not been in the greatest of form after such a, I keep saying Vancouver, I should say Whitecaps.
Right, yeah, not Vancouver. They're not still in here.
But they've had such a great start to the campaign, and like when you listen to MLS podcasts, things like that, is saying like, okay, well, they've maybe had an easier schedule at the start of the year. Big teams are coming up. How are they going to manage it? And it's been a little up and down. And Toronto have used this to go, right, we need to get our mentality back, and we need to continue playing our games and make every week this is the level we're playing at. whereas Vancouver haven't done that. So we'll have to see how well. I mean, if anyone can, I assume it's Vanni Sartini to get a team motivated again. But it's definitely something that doesn't help when you're going into your next match.
Yeah, and speaking of motivation of Vanni Sartini, let's move into the post match, because I was there, I was present in that one, and it was very, very raw. Probably the rawest press conference I've ever been a part of.
Yeah.
Especially with Vanni, like even in the fallout of the whole LAFC debacle and the playoffs and everything, even still, this was much, much more raw, where Vanni was quiet at the beginning. I've never heard that man speak under a certain decibel rate, but this was like I had to get my recorder closer because I could barely hear him. But like the graphic says there, they really did say we need to apologize to our fans for our performance because it was shameful. And there's a lot of other like really good gems in there of like, he said, if you ask me who was starting on Saturday against Inter Miami, against, at that time we thought Messi, I wouldn't be able to tell you because everyone was bad.
Yeah.
Like it was that level of candidness that I took pretty much everyone by surprise in the press box. We kind of gave looks of like, oh, wow, he's really letting loose in this one. But I think, that's something that makes Vanni so fantastic, is that when it's good, he will be joyous and he will be jubilant and he'll let you know. But when it's bad, he will also be very candid. He won't make excuses. He put it on himself. He was like, clearly it was the wrong approach. It was the wrong mentality. It was the wrong maybe lineup. And that's on me. I didn't prepare the boys well enough for this match. And I thought I did. And so we had to go back to basically the drawing table and make sure that we fix this as soon as possible ahead of Miami. So I really appreciate that side of it. But I know some people might have thought the comments a little too harsh, because he was basically saying that it was shameful to lose against Cavalry, which some people, including Mark Noonan, head of the CPL, took a little bit like, why are you saying that? Why are you saying it's shameful to lose against the CPL side? I don't think, from what I heard being in the room, Vanni meant it was shameful to lose against Cavalry. He was speaking quite brightly about Cavalry. I asked him like what he thought about Cavalry's performance, and he gave them a lot of praise. And he even said, they should have had at least a penalty shootout. He wanted to do away with the away goals rule based on the performance that Cavalry put on. He said that they should have at least have a penalty shootout to try to decide it. So he was very high on Cavalry, but I can sort of understand. I don't know if you also might have taken it as he was being a little bit harsh to say that it was shameful and that they need to apologize to their fans for losing against Cavalry.
Yeah, that's the thing when you're not like, because I was going to ask you like about your experiences with him afterwards and what he said that isn't part of these little sound bites that come out and these quick little quotes, because from the outside looking in, it just seems, it does look like he's saying, well, this is what we're playing. We've lost to this. Like, that's how it looks like on some of these quotes that come out, but it doesn't give the full context of what he's saying. I mean, Mark Noon's right. Like, this league has continued to grow and the teams are getting better each year. Like, we've seen the quality like in the league, like week in, week out. It gets better and better. So I can understand his anger at his own players' quality levels, and like some of them, it was shameful, like, because you're trying to get them set up, like, so looking from the outside in, from all the way over the pond here, only seeing those little bits, it did seem like he was being quite disrespectful. But I think if you get like you say, with the extra bits, you've sort of the more context that you've brought just then, just saying about how he was speaking in glowing terms about Cavalry, I think that you can understand what he's meaning. He just appears to be the most passionate man, heart on his sleeve, will just say what's in his head, and he's not the same as some of these other coaches who will sit and carefully think about the exact wording he wants to use.
Yeah, he is a very political coach, but he's not a political coach in that way.
No.
He is very outspoken about his politics in the sense, but he's not a very political coach where it's like he will watch everything that he says and he will give the most generic bland answers to make
Yeah.
sure that he doesn't step even a toe out of line now. And that's one of the
Mm.
reasons why I love
Yeah.
speaking with him and being at this press conference. It's through the good and through the bad. But yeah, it was not a slight against Cavalry. It was more of a slight against his own team and saying we need to do
Mm.
a better performance in this if we have any shot against Miami
Yeah.
on Saturday, though their chances have improved in recent news.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I think Cavalry can be very, very proud of their performance. It was honestly a real shame that they didn't get a penalty shootout. Hopefully, we do see the away goals rule sort of
Mm.
binned
Yeah.
in the next year's competition, as it seems like football in general is sort of moving away from the
Yeah.
away goals rule. And so, yeah, that will be nice to see maybe a little bit more drama in some cases with penalty shootouts and with some upsets. So hopefully we get to see a little bit more of that action in the future. Now we're going to move on to our third and final match, which was CF Montreal against Forge FC. And would you believe it? Back-to-back nights, back-to-back cup sets,
Yeah.
as Forge FC have beaten MLS side CF Montreal by 2-1. Montreal said, "Don't worry, Whitecaps, you won't be the only one in that category. We'll follow right behind you." And at home, they lost to Forge. Finally,
Mm.
Forge. See if Montreal have been that side that Forge have been so close to beating. I was
Yeah.
even at the penalty shootout that they had a few years back, where they just lost on penalties. They were the bogey team of Forge, where no matter how much they tried, they couldn't beat them. Finally, they
Mm.
beat them, and even more of a cherry on top, they beat them in their own backyard in Stade Saputo in
Mm.
Montreal. So a fantastic result from a CPL slash Forge point of view. Not so great for CF Montreal because there's a lot of tension in that club, especially between supporters and the players and the ownership. And it doesn't help that a lot of this tension was there before the match started. I can only assume that it doubled or tripled once the final whistle blew.
Yeah.
But before we get into too much of that, let's talk about again the CPL team, Forge FC, on their performance. Because they won 2-1, goals from Kwasi Poku in the 24th minute. Daniel Parra scored before that in the 14th minute. Victor Wanyama scored in the 66th minute to make it a little bit close. But as I
Mm.
mentioned, 3-2 on aggregate. Forge advanced, and it was a stellar
Mm.
first half from Forge. I don't know. I don't want to compare too much to the Whitecaps game, though. Inevitably, we're probably going to, given the
Yeah.
proximity and the situation.
Yeah.
But I felt like it was not that bad of a start from CF Montreal. I thought it wasn't like overall they played badly. They just kind of switched off
Mm.
in those moments, and Forge were quite decisive, which is something that we mentioned that that's something that some of the lower league quote unquote teams have to try to learn from and be better at if they want to compete with the big teams. Forge kind of showed that as like, you want to be able to beat these teams that are bigger than you, that have more resources than you, that have more stars than you, then you got to put your chances away. And that's exactly what Forge did in the opening half an hour. Two really good goals. Daniel Parra, I'm so happy he got that goal because
Yeah.
we've sung his praise, especially me. I've
Yeah.
sung his praises in the last few weeks of what a huge addition he's been for Forge
Mm.
in this, not only in this competition but in the league since he's gotten there. Fantastic for him to get that goal. And then Kwasi Poku, who starting in the front line
Uh,
from left back, left wing back, left wing to just screw it, your striker.
yeah.
I don't know what Bobby was cooking with that one, but it seemed to have worked because
Mm.
with just one ball in behind, he outpaces his marker and manages to get it past Sebastian Breza.
Mm.
2-0 at that point inside half an hour, and Forge fans were buzzing. What were your thoughts on the opening half an hour of this match?
Yeah, really exciting. It was great to see. I think that opening half hour, especially like for anyone who's tuning in from out, like if you showed that to anyone who doesn't watch these two teams, I don't think you'd say they were in different leagues.
Yeah.
Like Forge really did well. I think Breza should have done better with the Para goal, but
Yeah,
the
I agree.
build-up, Paddy Banga beating his play, beating the defender out wide, getting the ball across. And Para does really well because he doesn't take the best of first touches, but still manages to get that shot away, like in with enough power to get past Breza. In a difficult, like, it's not the easiest save, and I'm not trying to be overly harsh and take anything away from Para, but he did really well to get the ball out of his feet after a poor first touch and get the shot away. That was really good. Like you say, we can talk about other players. We've said this before, but like in the last two games, sometimes players aren't as clinical in the lower leagues, but Para definitely showed he had that ability there. And Poku, like you say, starting up front, I was really curious about it. Like when he saw that, and I was like, what are they trying here? And I don't watch a huge amount of Montreal, but you could see, and it was brought up in the during the game, how Kwasi Poku's pace gets in behind them. There's spaces available behind this defense quite regularly, and he really took advantage of it. And it was great to see him to get the goal through that way, because for him especially, I think maybe one of us did. I can't remember if it was me or you said for him as a potential sort of young player of the year candidate. And Para's done so well sort of taking his place. We were worried for him. And like Paddy Banga doing great on the left wing. It's like, where does he get these games? But he's moving around and he's got his goal, and that's great for him. I'm really glad. I thought he had a great game. Like as a player out of position, he held up the ball quite well. He showed he had a lot more strength than I often give him credit for. I don't realize how strong he is sometimes, because he just does look like that sort of thin sort of player that's going to try and drift by defenders when he's attacking on the wing. But he did really well. I mean, crosses into the box. He had a header that went well wide. He's not a target man forward. He's not prepared for that part of the game. But to get in behind defenders and when he's got the ball at his feet, I was really impressed. I mean, what did you feel about his game? Like,
no, I thought, I thought he did exactly what I think Bobby told him to do, which is see if Montreal are going to try to dominate the game. They're going to try to press us. You be that out ball that we can send that ball in behind, whether there's space when we're in possession or when we're in transition, and just run down that wing or down the central channel and try our best to score. That's exactly what he did. And like you mentioned, he's not a target man. He's not there to be that kind of hold up play striker. That's why you have a player like Jordan Hamilton or Taron Campbell. But for an in behind sort of striker, yeah, he did a fantastic job. He did his role to a T and got the goal that they needed. I mean, it was in the end the winning goal. So fantastic from him. And I loved his celebration. I don't know how much you're into your anime there, but he did a little Kagebushi no Jutsu, the shadow clone jutsu from Naruto.
I'm working my way through Pokemon with my son. So
okay.
I'll be moving on to other things.
A few years behind. You might get there. But yeah, no, I love the celebration, and really happy for him, because, like you mentioned, it's going to be tough to see, where he can break in, what role he can sort of take, because Daniel Para is doing so well at left back, and Paddy Banga is one of the first names on the team sheet at left wing. So for him to be able to find is like, hey, maybe I can fit in a striker whenever you need a behind striker when you're expecting to not dominate possession. I can be that guy. It's great for him to try to get some more opportunities overall. But fantastic first 30 minutes, first half overall. I mean, obviously Montreal started to get into it a little bit more, and Kalongo was standing on his head and at the end of the first half and throughout the entire second half, especially at the beginning of the second half, because for those that were watching, unfortunately there was like an hour long or an hour and a half long essentially weather delay in the match, which for me, I was actually unable to watch the second half because I had to go and play my own football game, and so I wasn't able to watch. I had to watch it back earlier today, I think it was. But when you have such a break, you kind of you lose the momentum, you lose the flow. Even though you do warm-ups and everything, it's hard to really lock back into the match. So obviously Forge weren't playing all that great at the beginning of the second half, and Montreal sort of sensed that and tried to pounce on it, and they did in the sense where Wanyama scored in the 66th, but they could have easily done it beforehand and even a little bit afterwards. If it wasn't for Colongo made some massive saves to deny the likes of like Sunusi Ibrahim and Wanyama and just to keep this lead, this narrow lead at that point, to keep it, where the hope and the dream was still alive, and he did fantastic. 7 saves, 10 recoveries. He showed real bravery and courage and experience. And one thing that I saw on Twitter is to show how great Colongo has been doing. No one has said anything about Tristan Henry since he's come in. No one has mentioned we need him. No one has mentioned where is he. No one has mentioned anything, just because Colongo has been fantastic. And this is another fantastic match, one of the biggest matches of his career. And it's not like when it was against Chivas where he was just thrown into the fire. He's had time to establish himself now with the team, and against a big side like CS Montreal, he performed super, super well. Again, another candidate for us of player of the week. What did you think about his performance? And I guess, the whole defensive performance from Forge in the second half, that to be able to withstand that Montreal pressure and keep it 2-1 all the way through to the final whistle.
Yeah, he was incredible. He was my other choice. Like, do I give it to him or Carducci for player of the week? But he gets the joys of the next round, so I gave Carducci because I thought the two of them were incredible. And that's, for me, that's like a huge thing to say for Colongo, because Carducci's got so much experience and he's sort of managed the defense in front of him for so long, and you kind of almost expect that from a player like Carducci, who's shown for long periods of time how well he can play. And Colongo's just doing that just off the bat. Like, he looks so confident. Like, the move, like, you watch him as Montreal attacking in this game, and he'll make a quick save, or if the cross comes in and the defender heads it out, he's so quick and he's so prepared. Like, at no point does it ever look like he isn't laser focused on what's going on around him, like to make sure he's getting his positioning right. His movements are so fast, and that smile when he gathers the ball at the end of the game, rings it down and looks around to the crowd, it just shows how confident he's playing and how much of a CPL professional he already is. Like you say, we're not talking about Tristan Henry. Forge have got like an absolutely top quality goalkeeper, and for however long they can keep hold of him, I guess.
That's a concern. He might be doing a little too well for Forge right now, where it's like, well, we need to keep him all here for a little bit longer. Let's not. I'm sure there are already teams outside of the league that are sniffing around Colongo right now. But yeah, superb performance from Colongo. I think we should talk a little bit about CF Montreal, because I feel like they suffered a little bit from the same thing of the Whitecaps, where they kind of came into it. And yes, it was a 1-1 draw, so they didn't have a lead, so they had to be a bit more switched off because things are still level. But I still think they had an idea that they were going to win. I don't know if the theatrics that were happening before the match, with the supporters basically holding signs saying this is not good enough, we need to see better, you're playing for the badge, demanding more from the players, because CF Montreal, if you haven't been following in the MLS, have not been very good in the league so far. They've had a number of games now. I don't know exactly what the winless streak is. It's like 7 or 8 games that they haven't won now. They just lost heavily to Toronto FC. I think the final score was something like 5-1 in that one. So it's been a tough time to be a CF Montreal supporter, and they wanted to make their feelings clear before this match. And while this would have been a perfect opportunity for CF Montreal to be like, we hear you, we understand, we're going to put in a good performance and win this match and continue going, and we're going to try to go win the Canadian Championship again after the Whitecaps winning it 2 in a row. They instead went on and lost. I don't know for you if you think that there was a sense of complacency similar to the Whitecaps, and that was the main reason, or if there was also maybe because of these theatrics, because of the pressure on Courtois and the players due to their poor performances, that's what sort of kind of maybe led them astray and forced them to not play at their best level, and gave the inch that Forge needed to get the goals.
Yeah, no, I don't think it was particularly On their performance. I think it's the second point. Like the issues going on around this club is what's caused this. This isn't them just taking their foot off the gas and accidentally like getting themselves in a pickle. I think what's going on around this club, this is like is getting to the players, and Forge have put in an absolutely quality performance that's frustrated them even further. And because things are going so badly around the club, performances in MLS haven't been great. Like you say, long winless run. There's just not the confidence there at the moment, and with players wanting to leave, like not knowing who's going to be, like what replacements they might make in the next window. There's just too much going on at that club, and I think Forge they've played Montreal at the right time to be able to, but that's not to take anything away from their performance. I think Montreal were really really struggled because of how well Forge did, and they just couldn't find their way through, and that goes through to much more than just taking the foot off the gas.
Yeah, and I think a really good example of the fact that they weren't in the right mindset was in the goal, actually, the Wanyama goal. I don't know if you saw it when you watched it back, but when the corner was taken, the short, Wanyama wasn't even looking at the ball. He was he was just like this, head in hands, like, oh God, what are we gonna do? And then he turned around, and he was like, oh, there's the ball, and then just kind of got on headed it in. So it was like great for him to score it, but just the fact that before he wasn't even looking at the ball, he was in his own world. He was just in his own mind, just probably just be like, oh, how are we gonna get out of this? That kind of shows. That was just like a perfect like snapshot of the whole situation with Montreal, where it's like they have quality players and they can do good things, but they're just not mentally in a good spot because of the performances and of the pressures from the fan base. And it's, the fans have been on ownerships, but for years. It's not been just with Courtois. It's not just being with Losada. It's not just being with Nancy. It's been a while that their discontent has been. This is just sort of coming to a head right now, and it's unfortunate that it's affecting CF Montreal so much. So yeah, we'll see what happens with them as they continue in MLS. But fantastic for Forge. They're going on into the semifinal stage. We know 3 teams in the semifinal stage right now, with Toronto FC, the Vancouver Whitecaps, and Forge. We will know the 4th and final team next week. I think it's the 29th. That's why we're not covering 4 matches, because the 4th match hasn't happened yet. And at halftime, we will get the draw for the semifinals to see who's facing who and where. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. We will probably talk about that. I don't know if probably in its own episode, but we'll definitely mention it and cover the draw and the match afterwards. But yeah, fantastic for Forge to be able to be in that position, to be able to be in that draw. And, that will mean that we have 2 MLS sides in the semifinal and 2 CPL sides in the semifinal, which is, I think that's how we would want it to be, that the CPL sides are right up there. And I don't know, personally, for me, as much as I would love to see CPL side face an MLS side and beat an MLS side to go to the final, I think it would be amazing if one of the 2 MLS sides knock each other out, and then a CPL side basically had a free go, whichever one won, to the final. I think that would be probably my best case scenario. But before we close out, I do want to mention quickly something, because I've seen this sort of discourse, and I did a little tweet about it, but I'm curious about your thoughts about, because 2 CPL sides beat MLS sides that have more resources, better players, and all of this. I've seen a lot of sort of arguing online, which is always going to happen, especially on Twitter. But that CPL, they deserve more respect from the MLS, and that it shouldn't be a surprise that they won, and basically comparing themselves to MLS and be like, they should be taking us, way more seriously. And for me personally, I don't like that kind of discourse, because yes, I think there should be more respect on CPL and the league in general, because we're building something really special here. But I want it. I would prefer it to be as like this is a yardstick for our own success. Let's not compare ourselves to the MLS. Let's enjoy the fact that we beat an MLS side, but that we should focus on ourselves of like this is how much we progressed, rather than pushing the idea of like CPL sides can kick it with MLS sides. CPL sides should be on the should be considered on same or similar level as MLS sides. I think that kind of thing isn't really healthy. And it really isn't, and it isn't necessarily true, because as much as I love the CPL, and like obviously we have a CPL podcast that shows the dedication we have, I do think that no CPL team on their best day can beat any of the MLS sides, the Canadian MLS sides, on a good day, just because there is that gap there of quality, of resources, of skill and talent. That doesn't mean that's going to be that way forever. But I just think right now the league isn't there yet, but it's growing, it's progressing. These games have shown that. So what are your thoughts on this kind of discourse before we close out?
Yeah, I mean, it's great to get excited about how the league's progressing, and it's fantastic these results this week. But yeah, we before the season even kicked off, there was the issues with Media Pro, and there's issues about trying to get more teams into the league. It's still super young, so it's just enjoy these as like individual things, as individual triumphs, rather than trying to compare leagues. The league's got sixth year, like it's so young, and there's so much to do, and there's so much, and it's exciting how it's starting, and it's exciting how things are going this year. But if the CPL is going to be looking and planning to try and compete with other leagues and trying to help themselves grow by looking at other leagues, MLS is way down the line. They're going to be looking at other things. It's like after a few more years, once you start hitting double digits, maybe they'll look to things like the A-League in Australia and different leagues like that, and seeing how they're competing, and are we at a level that we're higher than them, and how could we become a bigger league than this league that's been established longer, but we're in momentum now. And so yeah, it's something to sort of leave behind and just enjoy how this is growing, and it just makes these nights even more special for me. Like, yes, we got 2 wins over MLS teams, fantastic, just enjoy those.
Exactly. Yeah, no, we're in the same boat there. Just enjoy it, drink it in. It's you don't know how many more times we'll be able to see things like that, but hopefully we see it a lot more often, and we will be right there to comment on it and speak about it when they do. But that is it for this week's episode, for this roundup episode of the Canadian Championship. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow us once again on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC to give your thoughts on what you thought about this week's episode and all of the episodes. Did you agree with our takes? Do you think that, what are your thoughts on this discourse that we just mentioned? What are your thoughts on all 3 matches? Let us know, and if we enjoy one of your comments, then we might shout you out on the next episode. But until next time, my name is Felipe Ojejo.
And I'm Mike Rice.
And this has been Coast to Coast FC, signing out.